Damien Costello, a man forged in steel and shadow, radiated a chilling authority as he stood on the balcony overlooking the neon-drenched city. As the head of the Costello crime family, his world was one of cold calculations and brutal efficiency. Dressed in a tailored black suit, his crisp white-collared shirt was unbuttoned just enough to reveal the glint of a massive gold chain against his chest. Nothing ever fazed him. His consigliere, Marco, approached, a provocative smile playing on his lips. "Damien," he began, his voice a low rumble. "You always say your power can buy anything, anyone." Damien took a slow drag from his cigar, his expression unreadable. "Because it can." Marco leaned against the railing, gesturing with his chin toward a huddled figure on the sidewalk below. A young man, barely more than a boy, was curled up against the cold stone, his clothes little more than tattered brown rags. "See him?" Marco challenged, his tone laced with amusement. "He's your next acquisition. I bet you $5 million you can't marry him. Clean him up, and stay married for 3 months. Damien's eyes narrowed, locking onto the young man. For a moment, he didn't see a person, just a pawn in a game he was supremely confident he could win. $5 million? He asked, a cynical smile forming. "You clearly underestimate me, Marco." "We'll see," Marco toasted, his look daring. Damien remained silent, his gaze fixed on the scene below. The young man seemed entirely oblivious, a small, dented cup at his side holding a few spare coins. "Looks like the night's entertainment has begun," Damien murmured, turning back into the opulent penthouse. Minutes later, he was on the sidewalk, his polished leather shoes stopping just steps from the young man. Under the dim glow of a streetlight, the figure became clearer. Disheveled hair framed a face marked by exhaustion. Yet in his startlingly blue eyes, there was a silent strength that intrigued Damien. "Excuse me," Damien said, his tone a command. The young man looked up, startled. "What do you want?" he asked wearily, shrinking further into himself. Damien offered a smile that was all sharp edges and predatory charm. "I have a proposition for you. Something that could change your life." He frowned, suspicious. "I'm not interested." "I'm serious," Damien continued, kneeling to meet his eye level. "My name is Costello. I have money, a lot of it, and I need someone like you." "Someone like me?" he replied, a bitter, soft laugh escaping his chapped lips. "I'm not anyone's guinea pig, Mr. Millionaire." Damien ignored his sharp tone. "I'm willing to pay. You'll have food, clothes, a place to stay. All you need to do is marry me. For 3 months." The young man blinked, incredulous. "You must be joking." "I don't joke about business," Damien replied firmly. "It's a marriage of convenience. No real commitment. After 3 months, we part ways, and you walk away with enough money to start a new life." He sat in silence, the absurd proposal hanging in the cold air. His life had been a string of downward spirals, but something about Damien's authoritative presence grated on him. "Why me?" he finally asked. "Because you're here," Damien replied bluntly. That cynical response nearly made him stand and walk away, but the gnawing hunger and biting cold kept him rooted. "My name is Finn," he said softly. "And if I agree, how do I know this isn't some kind of sick game?" Damien pulled out his phone and made a call. Moments later, a sleek black town car pulled up. A sharply dressed driver stepped out and opened the back door. "Get in," Damien ordered. "We'll talk somewhere more comfortable." Finn hesitated, but the temptation to escape the street, even for a few hours, was too strong. He climbed into the car, and Damien followed. The ride was silent and tense. When they arrived at a luxurious hotel, they were escorted to a penthouse suite that made Finn's head spin. Damien ordered room service, and Finn ate with a hunger that was almost painful, while Damien observed him intently. "So, do you agree or not?" Damien asked once he'd finished. Finn took a deep breath. "How much?" $2 million, Damien replied, as if it were pocket change. The amount seemed unreal. With that kind of money, he could disappear, start over, and maybe even find a way to right the wrongs of his past. I need guarantees, he said, trying to regain some control. Everything will be in writing, Damien assured him. My lawyer will draft a contract. And the wedding? Finn asked hesitantly. Tomorrow, Damien replied. It'll be quick. A formality. Finn felt cornered, but he saw no other choice. He sighed and nodded. All right. Damien stood, satisfied. Excellent. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, your new life begins. The wedding was as cold and emotionless as promised. A few words before a judge, a few signatures, and it was done. Finn was now officially Finn Costello. As they left the courthouse, Damien placed a hand on the small of Finn's back, a gesture that was not of affection, but of ownership. The Costello mansion was a fortress, as grand and imposing as the man himself. Inside, Finn was introduced to a new life of suffocating luxury. That night, after a silent dinner at opposite ends of a long table, Damien walked him to his room. Why are you really doing this? Finn asked, stopping in the hallway. Damien leaned against the wall, crossing his arms over his powerful chest. Because I can. The answer was infuriatingly simple, yet Finn knew there was more to it. Later that night, alone in the cavernous bedroom, memories began to resurface. It wasn't just the grandeur that unsettled him. It was a dawning, horrifying recognition. He had seen Damien Costello before. A memory flashed in his mind. Years ago, a different life, a different home. He remembered his father, a proud small business owner, his face ashen after a meeting. He remembered the name on the hostile takeover documents, the name that had destroyed his family and shattered their lives. Costello. The man who had triggered his family's downfall, who had pushed his parents into despair and left him with nothing, was now his husband. Rage, cold and pure, boiled inside him. Did Damien not remember? Or did he simply not care? Determined, Finn found Damien in his study. I need to ask you something, he said, his voice shaking with restrained fury. Damien looked up, surprised. What is it? Do you really not remember me? Damien frowned, puzzled. Should I? Finn clenched his fists. My father, his company. You destroyed him. You took everything from us. Damien studied him for a moment, his gaze analytical, as if trying to place a forgotten business deal. Finally, he shrugged. I've crushed dozens of businesses. I don't remember all of them. His indifference was a slap in the face. Of course you don't, Finn replied bitterly. To you, we're all just disposable. Damien remained silent, but something in Finn's expression unsettled him. He took a step forward, but Finn was already gone, storming back to his room. This was no longer just a cold arrangement. It was a chance to face the man who had ruined him. And he was no longer the helpless boy from years ago. The following days were a grueling transformation. A team of stylists, trainers, and coaches descended upon Finn. Though he despised the superficiality, he adapted, his resilience shining through. Damien kept his distance but found himself watching Finn's progress. There was a fire in him that Damien hadn't expected. One evening, Damien decided to test him. Get ready. We're going out tonight. Where? Finn asked, suspicious. A private dinner. I want to see how you handle yourself. At one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, Finn, dressed in a tailored suit, drew admiring glances but felt acutely out of place. During dinner, Damien noticed his nervousness. Relax, he said in a low voice. You're doing fine. Finn looked up, surprised by the encouraging tone. For a moment, he saw something different in Damien's eyes. Not the cold, calculating crime boss, but something more human. On the ride back, the atmosphere was lighter. You're taking this seriously, aren't you? Finn asked. Damien glanced at him. I always take my bets seriously. The mention of the bet made Finn tense again. He was just a pawn in a game. That night, Finn wandered the quiet halls of the mansion until he found Damien's office door slightly ajar. On the massive desk, amidst financial reports, he found what he was looking for. a printed transcript of a conversation between Damien and Marco, detailing the bet. The words, dripping with indifference, made his stomach churn. Suddenly, the door opened, and Damien walked in. His expression hardened when he saw Finn holding the papers. "What are you doing in here?" Finn stared at him, clutching the evidence. "Is this all I am to you? A bet to feed your ego?" Damien sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not that simple." "Not simple." Finn let out a bitter laugh. "You've toyed with my life like I'm some disposable object." He threw the papers on the desk and stormed out, leaving Damien standing alone, a strange feeling of lost control settling over him for the first time in years. That night, while the mansion slept, Finn put his escape plan into action. He dressed in simple clothes and climbed down a trellis outside his window. Once his feet hit the ground, he ran without looking back. Meanwhile, Damien woke to an empty breakfast table. When his staff confirmed Finn was gone, a cold dread he couldn't explain washed over him. He found the empty room, the open window. "He ran away," he murmured, clenching his fists. It wasn't about the bet anymore. Something inside him, something he didn't recognize, was driving him to find Finn. Finn wandered the city for hours, his strength fading as a fever took hold. He finally collapsed on a bench in a small square as dawn broke. Damien searched the streets himself, driving his own car, scanning every corner. Guilt consumed him. Hours later, he found him, pale and trembling with fever. "Finn!" he called out, rushing to his side. "What are you doing here?" Finn whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm here to take you home," Damien said, his voice firm with a concern that surprised them both. "I don't have a home," he replied bitterly. Damien ignored his weak protests, lifting him into his arms and carrying him to the car. He drove not to the mansion, but to a private clinic run by a doctor on his payroll. As the medical staff cared for Finn, Damien stayed by his side, watching him sleep. A heavy weight pressed on his chest. When Finn finally woke, he found Damien sitting by the bed, looking exhausted. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice still weak. "Because I care," Damien answered sincerely. Finn let out a faint, disbelieving laugh. "You don't know what it means to care about anyone but yourself." Damien lowered his head. "Maybe you're right," he admitted, "but I'm trying to change." In the days that followed, Damien never left his side. He brought books and soup and sat in silence for hours. One afternoon, tucked inside a book, Finn found a handwritten letter. "Finn, I know words aren't enough. I've never been someone who admits mistakes, but you've made me look in the mirror and see a man I no longer want to be. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want to become someone worthy of your respect. Damien." That night, Finn held up the letter. "What is this?" "It's my attempt to be honest," Damien said. "You used me, humiliated me," Finn said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "How can I believe anything you say?" "I know I have no right to ask for your trust," Damien replied, his voice heavy. "But I'm here, and I'll stay here, even if it takes years for you to believe me." When Finn was discharged, they returned to the mansion. Damien surprised him. He had transformed one of the large, unused rooms into an art studio, complete with canvases, brushes, and paints. "You mentioned once that you liked to draw," Damien said with a shy smile. "I thought you might like a space of your own." Finn was speechless. It was a simple gesture, but one filled with a meaning that resonated deep within him. For the first time, he saw something in Damien beyond the arrogant mob boss. He began to spend his time in the studio, and painting gave him a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in years. Damien knew actions were needed, not just words. He approached Finn in the studio one afternoon. "I need your help," he said. "I want to start supporting community projects, shelters, youth centers. I think you can help me decide where to begin." Finn was skeptical. "Since when do you care about that?" "Since I realized the world doesn't revolve around me," he replied honestly. Reluctantly, Finn agreed. They began visiting the city's forgotten corners. Finn was surprised to see Damien interacting with people, listening to their stories with genuine interest. Something was changing in him. One evening, Damien organized a special dinner. The room was filled with candles, and soft music played. Thank you," he explained, "for helping me see." Over dinner, Damien opened up about his childhood. His cold father who saw emotions as weakness, and a mother who believed in love but died too young. "I think that's why I always used power as a shield," he admitted. "It was easier than dealing with real people." Finn listened, absorbing every word. "And now?" he asked. "What do you want?" Damien looked up, locking eyes with him. "I want to be better. Someone you might one day respect." After dinner, Finn retrieved a small canvas he'd painted. It was a serene landscape. "Here," he said, handing it to him. Damien's smile was genuine, touched by the gesture. Then Marco reappeared, showing up at the mansion unannounced. "Damien, how's it going with your little charity case?" he asked, his tone dripping with mockery. Finn, who was in the garden, froze and hid behind a column to listen. "What do you want, Marco?" Damien asked, his voice lethally calm. "Just checking in. The bet's almost up. Must be looking forward to collecting your 5 million inch." Hearing it spoken so carelessly reopened the wound Finn was trying to heal. "The bet doesn't matter anymore," Damien replied firmly. "I cancelled it." Marco laughed. "Cancelled? You're kidding me." "I'm not," Damien said, his tone turning to ice. "I don't need the money. And I don't need the bet." Finn stepped out from his hiding spot, his heart torn. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. Damien turned, startled. "Finn, I can explain." "I don't want explanations. I want the truth," he cried, tears filling his eyes. "Yes," Damien said, his voice soft but unwavering. "I cancelled the bet. Because you are more important than any stupid challenge." Finn stood silent, his emotions in turmoil. He wanted to believe him, but the fear of being hurt again was overwhelming. "I don't know if I can trust you, Damien." "Then don't trust me," he replied, his tone calm yet firm. "Just watch. Let my actions prove what my words can't." The days following their confrontation were tense. Finn spent his time in the studio, sorting through his thoughts. One morning, Damien found him on the terrace and placed a folder on the table between them. It was proof that the bet was officially terminated, the money returned, and a significant donation made to a youth shelter in Finn's name. "I want you to know I'm being honest," Damien said. Finn looked at the papers, then back at Damien. "You want to be different, but that doesn't change what happened." "It doesn't," Damien admitted, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." He continued to pour himself into their community work. Finn watched, and though he remained cautious, he couldn't help but notice Damien's genuine dedication. The barrier between them was beginning to fade. One afternoon, Damien led him to a small cabin at the back of the property. Inside was a refuge from Damien's childhood, filled with photos, old toys, and letters he'd written to his mother. Finn picked up a letter and read about a young boy's dreams and fears, revealing a vulnerability he had never imagined. "You really are changing," he said, placing the letter back down. Damien looked at him, his eyes filled with hope. "I'm trying. For you." Finn stayed quiet for a moment before responding. "Maybe there's still a chance for us." A few days later, Damien announced he'd planned a trip. A private plane took them to a small, peaceful village nestled in the mountains. They stayed in a simple, cozy house, away from the pressures of their life in the city. They walked on trails, cooked together, and talked for hours. Here, away from the shadows of his empire, Damien was just a man who was trying to heal. On their last day, as they rested by a lake, Damien turned to him. "Finn, I know I still have a lot to prove, but I want you to know, no matter what happens, this change in me is real." "And what do you want from me?" Finn asked, his heart hammering. "Just a chance," he replied simply. For so long, Finn had built walls around his heart. But now, standing before this changed man, those walls were beginning to crumble. When they returned to the mansion, something had shifted for good. The next morning, as they walked in the garden, Damien stopped. "Finn," he began, his voice serious, "I promised I'd do everything I could to earn back your trust. I need to know, have I made any progress?" Finn took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "You've changed, Damien," he admitted. "And yes, you're earning my trust back." A slow smile spread across Damien's face. Then he lowered himself to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a simple, elegant silver band. "Finn," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "will you do me the honor of being my husband? Not because of a contract, not because of a bet, but because I love you." Tears welled in Finn's eyes. For a moment he was speechless. Finally, a radiant smile broke through. "Yes, Damien," he whispered. "I will." Damien slid the ring onto his finger, and they embraced. A few weeks later, they were married in an intimate ceremony in the mansion's garden. It was a world away from their first cold wedding. This time, it was filled with genuine love and joy. Their life together was unconventional. Damien remained a powerful, feared figure, but his rule was now tempered by a compassion and justice that Finn had taught him. They expanded their community projects, becoming a quiet force for good in the city's underbelly. Their mansion, once a symbol of cold power, became a warm, loving home. One evening, as they stood on the balcony where it all began, looking out at the city lights, Damien wrapped his arms around Finn from behind. "You changed my life in ways I never imagined," he whispered, pressing a kiss to his temple. Finn smiled, leaning back against his chest. "And you've shown me that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, together." They looked ahead, knowing that no matter what challenges lay in their future, they would face them as one, united by a love that had transformed them both.